I move that the question be now put.
I'm going to hear. That's no restriction on it, Honourable Annette King.
Thank you very much,
there's
Mr.
no
Chairman.
order.
I
want to clarify something. There's no restriction on the number of closures that a member can take. The Honourable Annette King.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There used to be, didn't there? So there must have been a change in standing orders to allow a person to take more than one close of motion.
Well,
but thank you, Mr. Speaker, for telling us what we ought to know. I want to address this part of the bill, Part 2, remedial and other matters, and I too want to go to the area around the functions of the corporation and the role that they're going to play. You see, it's under remedial and other matters, which I found very interesting, because anyone that knows the meaning of remedial means supplying a remedy. And I can't see what remedy is being supplied under this part of the bill. It's meant to correct or improve a deficient skills. So I can only assume that the Minister thinks there are deficient skills in Housing New Zealand, and I want to dispute that. But I want to start from the position that one of the features of a national government that goes back many years, and some of us experienced it when we came into government, was this drive to stop policy making by government departments and others, to drive out the policy making part and contract it out to somebody else. That was the history in the health portfolio. So the policy function of the Ministry of Health was driven out and put into other agencies. And I'm saying to the Minister, why would she not want to have policy advice from Housing New Zealand? The very agency that has for so long been working with tenants, been working in the community, that have very, very competent staff that are able to provide the sort of advice a good minister would want. Why would the Minister remove this role from Housing New Zealand? Who will replace this role? Where will the advice, the on-the-ground advice that a minister would want, where will it come from, Minister? Would you be able to answer that shortly? Where will this policy advice come from? One of the problems for a government is when they think they've got all the answers themselves, when they don't think they need good, strong policy advice from their own agencies. And it seems to me that the Minister has decided that she doesn't like the advice she's got from the corporation. I know they have raised a few issues, actually, with the Minister in relation to some policy. And I think this is a way of getting rid of that sort of advice. They don't want anybody that might contradict the direction and the path this government is taking in housing. So, Minister, please tell us who will replace the Housing New Zealand in providing advice on policy. Because when we look at this particular piece of legislation, we see, Minister, in the regulatory impact statement that no evaluation was done on it. That Treasury didn't even do an evaluation on this policy that is before the House today. So who is going to do the evaluation and the advice on future housing policy? I think that is a very serious question that needs to be answered. And then we find out that in this particular part of the bill, that the corporation will no longer be expected to undertake research and evaluation activities for the purpose of advising the Minister of Housing. So who is going to undertake the research and evaluation? It's not Treasury, it's not Housing New Zealand. Who is it that's going to undertake this very serious function that must be undertaken when formulating very good policy? This is a huge gap in this government's approach to policy making. Get rid of the agency that would help with it, get rid of any advice that they're going to get and any evaluation. This seems to me to be a very short-sighted approach, Minister, when it comes to Housing New Zealand. I agree with my colleague who just resumed his seat that Housing New Zealand for decades has provided incredibly good advice They have some excellent people working in them. And you know, if you go to your own Housing New Zealand offices when the doors are open and you can get in, because of course the doors are closed now and you've got to ring up to get inside the door. But if you've got a close relationship with your local Housing New Zealand, you will find them to be very knowledgeable people about what's going on in your area. They can provide the quality advice to a minister on the ground. They are good people. But unfortunately, I think this minister's going down the same track that she went down when she was Minister of Social Development. Because if you go to the WINS offices now, you will find a very demoralised bunch of people, people who used to care a lot. Mr.
Call the Honourable Damien O'Connor.